first time since '93, a Democrat is representing New York's 20th district. And you can be sure that next year, a lot of attention and a lot of money by both parties will be focused in on this Hudson Valley race. Recently, I spent some time with freshman Congresswoman Kirsten Gillibrand, both in her district and in Washington. Just after 9 a.m., Congresswoman Kirsten Gillibrand steps off the metro and runs through her day, first in her head and then with her staff.
By 11:45.
It's a day that's starting out less hectic than normal without her 4-year-old son Theo in tow, because today he's home with his grandparents. After a quick stop in the office, Gillibrand heads over to her first appointment, a meeting with Governor Eliot Spitzer. 20 minutes later, it's back to the office. On the way, she shares details about the balancing act she does as a mother and a congresswoman, leaving her 4-year-old in daycare, moving her family to D.C., and spending many Saturdays in New York with her constituents instead of her husband and son. Those are just a few of the sacrifices she's made along the way. Aside from the many reminders of family in her office, when she's at work, this congresswoman is all business.
So I think that's the challenge for everyone, is just to always be in constant communication with your district, because what happens here is so foreign sometimes. It's not reported in the local press, and it sometimes seems like you're in the weeds, and so you have to translate that to our families back home about what I'm actually doing. And one tool I've used to help give them more information is I publish my schedule online. So the day after I take meetings, I publish it on my website.
An idea some people thought was crazy, but to Gillibrand, it's part of the job.
So what's the next thing on our schedule?
A legislative staff meeting. First on the list, a veterans health bill.
Basically what it would do is just sort of require that all branches perform mental and physical examinations for end of service.
Before the bill goes anywhere, she checks in with her steering committee back home.
Give another call, just to make sure he's okay with it, because he's our youngest veteran.
Veteran care is a major concern for the 20th district that Gillibrand represents. The district is so spread out, it borders on 3 other states and is home to more than 70,000 vets.
It's more of a mission for her to help veterans rather than, some political issue. It's, I think, truly deeply in her heart. She really feels some of the pain that the veterans feel, especially the guys coming back now.
On Veterans Day at a local museum, everyone wants a chance to chat.
Thank you for being here.
Vets,
The budget will be the issue.
local politicians,
Are you going to vote in favor of the bridge?
and of course, reporters. Just over a year ago, Gillibrand was running against a 4-term Republican incumbent, John Sweeney. It was a race that many thought he'd won until allegations of spousal abuse and ties to embattled lobbyist Jack Abramoff hit the headlines. Half of her 2-year term is still in front of her, but she's already raised $2 million for her re-election bid. In fact, she ranks just second in the list of top congressional fundraisers. And the list of Republicans looking to unseat her in 2008 started growing since she took office. Was that difficult, though, when you first came into Congress? You already had to start fundraising for next year, for 2 years down the road?
Well, it's the reality of politics.
One of her possible opponents in 2008, John Wallace, recognizes that reality too. He's among a handful of Republicans already filling their war chest for a primary battle.
The problem with the elections is that in Congress is you get elected, you're brand new, and all of a sudden, no sooner do you go to work the first day than there's people running looking for your job.
The biggest threat may come from former New York Republican Party Chairman Alexander Treadwell, who's working to trump Gillibrand's fundraising efforts. In addition to their own coffers, whoever takes the primary will have the backing of the National Republican Congressional Committee. Gillibrand's district is being targeted, and the GOP is planning to shell out the necessary cash to unseat her. The associate editor for the online publication Real Clear Politics, Reed Wilson, says that's because the 20th is a district that is likely to vote Republican.
I think you'll see a lot of these freshmen survive. Whether or not they survive, 4 or 6 years down the road is another question. But at the moment, the Republicans are just in such a bad position that it's really hard for them to fight back against anybody.
Fellow Democrat Governor Eliot Spitzer says her record will come out on top.
She is creating the arguments for us. It's not as though we need to do anything for her. Voters are going to judge Kirsten based on her record, and if you look at what she has done fighting for the issues in her district, people are going to say, of course we want to reelect her.
Another piece of ammunition the GOP hopes to use is an overwhelming dissatisfaction with the Democratic Congress. In a recent poll, 69% say they're unhappy with the job that Congress is doing.
Is that going to be bad news for Democrats and yourself, and are you nervous for the next election?
No, I think the polls rightly show that people are very frustrated. They wanted this Congress to end the war in Iraq. And it's very hard to end a war. If you look back at history, if you look at Vietnam, I think it took over 4 years to end that war and 32 resolutions. It is not easy because when you have a commander-in-chief who is set upon a certain strategy and goal, there are things Congress can do, but it's very hard to end a war.
Until then, she'll continue her balancing act in Washington.
Let's ask Susan Davis to look into this.
In the 20th District.
Hey, how are you? Nice to see you.
And at home.
Come on, little one.
And that balancing act just became a little more difficult. Congresswoman Gillibrand is pregnant with her second child. She's due in May. Rich, back to you.